Brenda, you said that Allison and Karen. Okay. Okay. All right, perfect. I now call this committee of the whole of the Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Just for the record, directors Beck and Gordon are on Zoom. They're not here in person, but they're on Zoom. First subject we'll go over is conditions for learning subway. Conditions for learning survey. I will turn it over to Superintendent.
Thank you. Tonight we have the Director of Equity and Learning Supports, Program Director of School Climate Transformation, and our School Climate Transformation Specialist, Courtney Olson, Lisa Baxter, and Cami Montoya. They are the ones leading this effort in our district, and they're going to walk us through our conditions for learning survey results. The format should be very recognizable to us. So, Courtney and team, thank you guys for coming tonight and putting, especially all the hard work that you put into this. I know it's important to us. We take it very seriously, so we're excited to review our data and see what our next steps are.
All right, good evening. I'm going to get us kicked off. So as TJ said, we'll be reviewing our conditions for learning data with all of you this evening. And it's really important for us to get your feedback as board of directors as we continue to work on our implementation plan for the district and moving our system forward. So thank you, Kim. Yes. Yep. So these are our intended outcomes for tonight. You scroll down. Yes. And you can use the middle thing too, Kimmy. Okay. So we're going to introduce the conditions for learning, review the continuous improvement process, examine our current reality of conditions for learning, and then examine progress on the priority construct of emotional safety. So that is the construct that was selected last school year, and that will be continuing on this school year. So our format tonight is, once we kind of just set the stage, remind you all about how the conditions for learning survey works and how it's scored and how we analyze it. We'll give you different sets of data, and we'll be using a plus delta protocol. So as you're looking at this data, we'd want you to be thinking about what are the pros we see in this data and what are the areas for improvement, our deltas. And so then at the end of each of these data sets, we'll ask you, we'll take 3 to 5 minutes to share out feedback you want to provide us so we can take that back to our district plan. Okay. So this is our continuous improvement process. This is our problem-solving model we are using within our district. And again, today we are determining the current state and getting feedback from all of you around our CFL data.
All right, I'm going to take a few minutes just to reactivate your knowledge about the CFL, how it's set up, what it measures. So this is an annual survey that we are required to administer as delivered by the Department of Education. And so we give it to students in 3rd through 5th grade. They have 25 questions, and then our 6th through 12th grade students have a few more questions with 40. There is also a parent/family version of the survey and a staff version, which are optional, but we do send that out, and we want high participation by those stakeholders as well. The results of the student survey factor into our Iowa School Performance Profile at 5% at both levels. We first gave this survey in 2019, and then during 2020 COVID year, we did not. And then we came back, gave it in the spring of 21, and again last year in 22. And the CFL is outcome data, meaning it's one way that we measure our PBIS goals, which is one of our priority initiatives. The CFL was designed with 3 domains in mind. The first domain is safety. And safety refers to not only physical harm or safety, but also the emotional safety component of verbal abuse, teasing, and being excluded. The second domain is engagement. Now, engagement in this survey refers to demonstrating respect for others' differences. And the last domain that the CFL is built around is that of the environment, which is about the rules and expectations that are in our buildings and how they are enforced. In addition to the 3 domains, the CFL measures 5 constructs. They are physical safety, emotional safety, adult-to-student relationships, student-to-student relationships, and boundaries and expectations. And emotional safety was deemed our priority construct after we reviewed our data last year, and that was vetted through all our stakeholders, and stakeholders also weighed in by voting or filling out a form as to what they believed emotional or which construct we should focus on, and it was emotional safety. And I want to remind you also that the data for our emotional safety was very low, but it was also low throughout the state, and we saw that trend throughout the state. So how is the CFL scored? Well, every construct has 5 to 9 questions. And in order for a child to be deemed a positive score, they must answer each question positively. When they do that, their overall score on that construct is a positive score. The same thing happens conversely with the negative score. If a respondent answers negatively to each question under that construct, 5 to 9 questions, they answered negatively to everyone, their score will be scored as negative. Now, what if a respondent answers some positively and some negatively? Well, in order for it to be positive, they have to answer all positive for it to be counted positive. So even one answer scored negatively will count that whole construct negatively for that student. So this next slide gives a little more detail. So if 100 students took the survey, or 100 people, whatever survey we're talking about, and 67 of them answered positively to every question under that construct, the overall construct score for us in that subgroup would be a 67. This slide shows the answer that must be selected for the construct to be coded as positive. So you can see the 5 constructs on the left. Under physical safety, whether it's the 3rd through 5th grade survey or the 6th through 12th grade survey, in order for that student to be counted as a positive response, the only way they can answer is 0 times. Same thing for emotional safety. Every answer, they have to select 0 times. Now, under the last 3 constructs, adult to student, and expectations and boundaries, there are 2 choices that they can select for the entire construct to be coded positively. They can check yes or sometimes for the lower grades, or strongly agree and agree for the upper grades. The next 2 slides are our PBIS goals that align to CFL data. So we had a data task team, and they set 2 goals that we hope to reach within 3 years. So the first one is around participation. By June 2025, the district conditions for learning participation will increase from 70, which is where it was last year, to 95% for all demographic subgroups. And just for comparison, when we set this goal, the state of Iowa participation rate was 77%. So you can see the stair-stepping of participation rates that we want to hit for next year and in 24 and in 25. At the bottom of this slide, we've noted what our participation rate was last year. So our overall participation rate in this survey, was 82%, and that compared to the state of Iowa's participation rate of 84%. And by participation rate, this includes both students that are in our buildings as well as for online learners. The second goal that we have under our priority initiative of PBIS is that by June 2025, the student emotional safety score on the Conditions for Learning survey will increase. Now, we are focusing specifically on 3 subgroups because these were the subgroups where there were the most disparities. So we are focusing on our multiracial students, our African American students, and our students with IEPs. So I'll talk you through the first bullet point just so you're clear on what this means. So in 3 years, by 2025, our score for our multiracial students will increase from 15.1 to 40% for students in grades 3 to 5. And for our students in grades 6 through 12 in 3 years, we want to move that from 27.5% to 40%. On the right, in the red lettering, is how we scored last spring. You can see we made a little bump toward our goal with our lower grade students, but we went back a bit with our upper grade students, so we have some ground to cover over the next couple of years to hit our target. I will give you just a minute here to look at these other 2 bullets, and then Cammie will take the mic.
Okay, we do have a protocol coming up soon, a plus delta, where we'll stop and just kind of ask your thoughts. So we'll just keep moving along if that's all right. Okay, so next we'll just dive right into the student data first. So we're going to look at grades 3 through 5. And in grades 3 through 5, if you look at the chart we have up here, we have all 5 constructs. So just to walk you through this graph just a little bit, adult to student relationships, this means that 72% of student respondents in 325 said that they scored positively. That means they had all positive answers in that construct. You can see our comparison to the Department of Ed there, and then the change since last year. So in that area from adult to student relationships, for example, we were 8 off of the Iowa Department of Ed and went down 3 from the previous year. Student to student relationships, 71% of students said that responded positively. That was our greatest opportunity here in this area. It was a negative 15 from the Iowa Department of Ed and down 8 from the previous year. Boundaries and expectations, 67% of students responded positively. That's negative 8 from the Iowa Department of Ed and down 4 from the previous year. Physical safety, 47%. We're off 11 from the Department of Ed and down 6 from the previous year. And emotional safety, and as you can see, that's why we chose emotional safety as a district priority at 17%. Still only 2 off of Iowa Department of Ed and down 5 from the previous year. If we look at it just very concretely over time, 3rd through 5th in the area of emotional safety, 2021 we're at 22%, and then 2022 we're at 17%, which is also the data that we looked at to decide to still continue to live in the emotional priority construct. Results by subgroup. So this is the percentage of students in each subgroup that responded positively. Confidentiality protected means that there was no subgroup data put in. So in campus, it just said no results or no data put in. That when they were registered, there is no race or ethnicity that was put in the registration. The other way we thought might be beneficial to look at it would be, this is our result at 17% if we're just looking at the emotional safety construct, and the Iowa Department of Ed was at 19. And then we also wanted you to see us in comparison to the AEA, which is also at 19. And then this is the distribution of schools. I thought this was interesting to look at as well, across the board where other districts scored. Okay, I think we said we want to take 3 to 5 minutes, maybe plus delta, just things that you noticed. We'll capture some notes over here to take along with us as well.
All right, so would we like to share out some of the plus deltas you noticed as we reviewed that data with you?
Director Potts.
Well, the one thing I noticed is they're not that emotionally secure in North Scott or PV.
Director Poston.
So as far as the scoring for conditions for learning, this is all, I assume this is all put together by the state, correct? Okay, so I'm questioning why, on any of the constructs, why it has to be 0 times, and not something in between. So if it's a 1, it's automatically a negative response. Any thoughts on that?
I think there are a lot of thoughts on that, similar to what you're surfacing. And so that's why when we shared this data with our building teams and even with our district teams, we just reminded them of what's in our control. And this is a data point for us to track our measure on. So just trying to keep that in mind as we've been processing it, but otherwise to know why they have it scored that way or why they chose to have this instrument, have that measure, I'm not sure.
In many ways, for me at least, what becomes meaningful is how we compare then to the rest of the state or other districts, since we're all being held to this standard.
Yeah, that's just what I was going to say. We don't have much choice, otherwise you don't have a fair comparison then. The other thing is from 2021 to 2022, there was a drop from 22% down to 17%. Do you think that's from after effect from COVID? Is that why there was less participation, or is it hard to say?
I think it's hard to say. I think there was a lot of talk, with online learning, back in person learning, just kind of that dynamic, how it unfolded.
And just for, one last question for myself is, so your goal is to go from 70% to 95%. So how are we going to accomplish that? To me, 95%, that's going to be pretty tough, but.
I think that's the work of our district-wide PBIS team in building a system that's responsive to our students so that they feel emotionally safe. So what are we doing at our universal level to create an environment where kids are safe and feel valued and are learning at high levels?
And I did want to point out that the 95% is just the participation rate, that we get 95% of our students to take it. And we were at 82% last year. So we're going to keep pushing as hard as we can to get as many responses as possible.
I would say that 82% is also with so many students online, and that number just continues to be less and less. So those are usually the kids that are harder to get as well. So I'm hopeful that with the more kids that are in person, that number will go up also.
Director Kleindrum.
And last year, we actually looked at questions that fit under this. Is this the one that deals with, have you ever been bullied online? Like, how is the school district in control of that kind of thing? So one negative on that, out of our control, obviously in the whole state. I think, if there's ever a time where you get a chance to talk to the state and say, we need to redo this because you've asked questions that we have no control over.
Director Hayes.
I agree with everything that's been said so far, but I also feel a sense of bias in here too, because when you compare this urban district to another district, your answers would no way be comparable to even meet the benchmark. And my second question is, for it's the 3 to 5, grade 3 to 5, with our scores being so low, are some of the third graders even able to comprehend what they're doing here and just marking answers? Or I have some valid concerns about that.
We are required to read the survey out loud to 3rd through 5th graders, whereas at the upper grades, they can take it independently. So I know when I was principal at Harrison, we did answer questions for the kids to get their heads around what this meant, but I'm not positive if that was the practice everywhere, to be honest. But we want them to be clear in what they're answering.
Director Gordon, did you have any questions?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, I'm on a headphone, I'm trying to talk as loudly as I can. So my question is, I'm trying to understand the 82% of participation. Is that from everyone total, staff, students, and family responses? Or is that just from the students?
Yes, this is just the student participation rate, which is the only survey we're required to administer.
Okay, so I guess I'm confused how that math works out then, because the total of the elementary number of respondents and the secondary number of respondents is less than 10,000 students, which if we have 14,000 some students in the district, that's not 80%.
I believe that we had 27, I'd have to look into that, but I thought we had 2780 total responses. And at the upper grade, we had 5,663 total responses.
Right, so that equals 8,443 total responses. So where does 82% come from? If we have 14,000 students, that's only 60%.
We pulled it right. We'll have to dig in. We pulled it right off the survey, so we'll have to look up the total number that took it then.
Okay, that's the only question I have right now. Thanks.
Director Beck, did you have any questions?
I can't speak very well. I apologize. So I'll just text anything I have.
Okay. Thank you.
I just figured out, I think, the percentage. So we have 14,000 students, but only students in grades 3 through 12 take the survey. So that's why it's less.
Okay, thank you. That makes more sense.
My question pertains to slide 16. The two numbers you have there is the one on the right side, total responses, and the one on the left side, the negative responses. Is that what that is?
Thank
Yeah.
you. So it's saying that in 2021, yes, that is the number of students, which makes the 22%.
Okay.
Yep. And then same for them.
So more students, 216 more students took it this year, but we had like 92 less responses. Okay. Thanks for clarifying that for me. Seeing no other questions, I'll turn it back over to you all.
Allison's statement is that Director Beck says that it's. I noticed that we are comparable to other districts, and that is reassuring, but we have a lot of work to do.
Okay, we'll go on to 6 through 12 now. This is still living in the student data. So if you call your attention to this slide here, so if we're looking at students 6 through 12, 44% of 6th through 12th grade students said they felt physically safe at school. That's -5 or a 5% difference in the Iowa Department of Ed and down 8 from the previous year. 32% of students said their student-to relationships were healthy or they felt positively about that. That's a difference of 6 from the Department of Ed and down 2 from the year prior. We have an increase here on this one. Boundaries and expectations. 31% of students felt comfortable with the boundaries and expectations in their school. Still 5 below the Iowa Department of Ed, but 1 increase from last year. Adult to student relationships, 30%. That's 6 off from the Department of Ed and down 2 from the previous year. And emotional safety is at 25%, 2 above the Department of Ed and still down 4 from last year. Over time, in 2021, this was the number of responses out of the total, which gave us 29%, and it's 25% this past time they took it. And that's again 6th through 12th. If you're looking at data by subgroup, you can see Asian is 33%, Black or African American 23%, Hispanic Latino 28%, multiracial is 22%, and again, these are all students who responded positively. 25% of the white students, and then 27% of the ones that came up as confidentiality protected, which again just means that their race or ethnicity was not in the system. So then if you go back to the same comparison, you look at how we compared to the state. 25% was our result. Again, I think it's interesting to see the distribution of other districts as well in that bell curve. Iowa Department of Ed was 23%. And then it's compared to our AEA. AEA was 24%, and our result was 25%. So that's kind of nice to see. Okay, we'll take about 2.5 minutes to just let you kind of reflect on that data, and then we'll share out.
Questions on the boundaries and expectations construct is that students feel comfortable with them, or the students know them and know what is expected of them. Boundaries and expectation construct, is it that students feel comfortable with the boundaries or know them and know what is expected of them?
We have
We're going to
copies
pull
of
up the questions, and we'll
to-
look at those and can read those to you.
So we're in the 6 through 12. All right, so these are the boundaries and expectations questions for 6 through 12. First one is there are clear rules about what students can and can't do. The principal and teachers consistently enforce school rules. If I skip school, at least one of my parents or guardians would be notified. Students caught drinking, smoking, or using illegal drugs are not allowed to participate in any extracurricular activity for some time period. If I got in trouble at school for breaking a rule, at least one of my parents or guardians would support the school's disciplinary action. I feel safe at school. My school lets a parent or guardian know if I've done something wrong. The rules at this school are easy to understand. My school lets a parent or guardian know if I'm doing a good job. And that was the last one.
Director Gordon, did you have any questions on this part?
No, not on this part. Thank you. Did you hear that? I said no, not on this part.
Oh, yep, heard you. Thank you. I guess the only thing I would say, the adult to student relationships, I could see those being lower because obviously you're at that age where you think you know it all. I live that pretty regularly at home, so I get it. I could totally see how my kids would answer some of those questions too. It's a hormone problem. Right. I guess the other question I'll ask, since no one else is asking any questions here, when you get the survey results back, obviously there's particular questions, and that's where you're able to hone in and focus on. What would be like the biggest proponent to getting the negative result on one of the surveys on one of these sections? Do you need me to ask a specific question? So, like the boundaries and expectations, what's the one in there that is the burning hot one that gives the negative feedback on?
Honestly, one of the biggest ones in, for example, the boundaries and expectations construct is I feel safe at school. Yeah. That's one of the biggest ones in that had the most negatives. And, there's even conversation, does that fit there? How? Because then that's a whole nother construct as well. So it's kind of an off question of all the other ones. And it's the one that has the most negative responses.
Followed by my school lets a parent or guardian know if I'm doing a good job.
For example, in the I feel safe at school, there's almost 1,400 kids that said a negative there, which that's a huge piece of the data for just that one negative. Now they're negative in the whole construct. So,
Gotcha.
I also think most of those questions are in our control in the school district, but my parents are going to support the school if I get in trouble. You'd hope, but again, you have no control of that. And so that question, potentially could throw the whole thing as negative. So yeah, it's concerning that a lot of our negatives are under our control, but there's also a question in there that I question it being in there.
I'll ask another one. All right, so how long does it take you all and your group to decipher all of the survey results and then I guess this is going to be a multi-answered question here, but so obviously you take all the survey results, figure out what the issues are, and then put a plan together going forward. How much time is wrapped up in that? 'Cause I would feel by the time you got a plan together, you'd be going into the next survey cycle. And then how many people are involved in that?
Well, you're actually jumping ahead a little bit for us. So
Oh.
it took us it takes time, right? Because we want to give time and attention to this data that we're collecting from our students and stakeholders. So we started with our SCBH leadership team, so our PBIS leadership team at the district level, and we analyzed it, right? We had a protocol that we went through and identified strengths and barriers. We looked at the questions to do that. And then with each barrier, we did a 5 why protocol. So we would take the barrier statement and ask why 5 times to like drill down and get at, okay, what are some actions we can do with that? We did that same protocol with our district implementation team. We did it with our DSAT team. We just wrapped up Leadership Academy and had our building leadership teams do that. And we'll be asking our youth leadership teams to be doing the same thing. And so then it's on us to collect all those actions and see what they're putting into place at their building to know how that impacts our district plan. So we have spent a lot of time looking at this, getting other people to analyze it to influence our district-wide plan. And your voices here tonight are a part of that. And now we can skip that slide at the end.
That totally took like a couple more of my question. I was going to ask if you involved the youth leadership team, so good for you for that. And then with this, the survey results, are they like building specific so you can target, not target, but I mean you could pick out if there was a building that had, I'm trying to think how to say this right, different survey results from the other, so then you could really wrap some supports around that. And
yeah, so the results you're looking at tonight are the district-wide results, but these same results are available for each building. And so we as a district team and as district leadership will look at it from that lens, but buildings focusing on their building and what they can impact.
Director Poshin.
So did you see a lot of discrepancy from building to building?
In all honesty, and we do have, it all put together, and we just started conversations around that. Not as much discrepancy as we would have maybe thought. A lot of things were very similar. Emotional safety was low in pretty much all buildings across the district. It was the lowest. It was a lot of the same themes and trends. Right now, we're really looking at dips and, and increases. Okay, who dipped from last year and why, who maybe made some increases. We need to start having conversations with those buildings. What did they do different from last year? Things like that. So it was actually interesting that it wasn't this huge, outlier that they all followed the same themes and such, but there are definitely some things that we are going to be having conversations with buildings and hope to help wrap around and support.
Never mind, she answered that one. I am speaking for Dr. Beck tonight. So we did go up 1% on the boundaries and expectations 6 through 12, which seems to be a good sign for our discipline work.
I'll ask one more question and then you guys can move on since when you review the results, is it kind of hard when you have that discussion with the different buildings? Because I mean, the way to survey, I mean, even just if one negative throws the whole thing off, it could really make it feel like you're not doing your job. So does it, at the building levels with the building leadership teams, do they kind of take that a little personal at first and you have to unpack that? And then, I mean, I kind of take it a little personal reading it, but I mean, it's a rigged survey, to be honest. I'm probably not in a position to tell the state that, but it really seems like a rigged survey if one negative could throw a wrench. And I feel like a survey should be set up to help you really hone in on your problem area and then address it at that.
Yeah, so I do think people struggle with it, right? Because they want to know why, and then they look at the questions and how it's scored and all those things. But we really work hard to just set the stage that this is the survey. This is what we're being assessed on. This is one data point, right? It's an important one, and we want to glean from it what we can to influence our plan, but then just move on and be solution focused. So I don't know if you two have anything else to add. Okay. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's how we kind of set it up.
I can tell you, having been in a building just 2 years ago, it was very personal for me and my staff, because these are our students, and this is what our students said about our school. But I think a great thing then is having our youth leadership teams in place, because they can help us unravel why did our students answer this way, and their voice is important in helping adults understand the way their peers have responded.
Yeah, and I will just say we tried to really set the stage strongly at these leadership academies for that work and talk about, we're going to get a little uncomfortable with this because it is uncomfortable. At the end of the day, the reality is this is the data and what are we going to do? So it's been neat to see some buildings that are taking this and doing more with it. They're walking into classes and they're giving different questions so they can pinpoint which kids are feeling this way so they can really take some action. And some of the building principals and teams really had some networking time the other day and came up with some really good ways to hone in on this and say, well, what do I need to do different? So it's been interesting to watch. They're taking the data seriously, that's for sure. So it's good to see.
Director Gordon, did you have any questions after some of the discussion?
No, you asked a lot of good questions, and that was good information. I don't have any additional questions right now.
Okay, thank you.
Is any of this correlated with attendance information and or academics and or free and reduced meal status? Do we look at those statistics and whether some score lower or higher than others?
So it's an anonymous survey. So we, other than subgroups, we wouldn't be able to get a lot more information unless they develop some tools for us that somehow has that all pulled.
Director Hayes.
With that being said, would you think that there would be any correlation with the mixed race, African American, and the other groups going so low? I'm sorry.
Did you?
With the tied into the question from Director Beck, that you can actually sort them out who it is, but with the there was 3 subgroups in here that were really low, and the multiracial, African American, and the students with IEPs. I'm wondering if there's any correlation with that in comparison to the free and reduced, and even as far as the title school.
Yeah. I think all those data points that Director Beck listed are all the data points that we were trying to find convergence with to make decisions for our students. I think what we have noticed looking at the CFL data across our subgroups is, unfortunately, a lot of times we see huge discrepancies between our subgroups. And we're looking at some of this data, it's not as discrepant against subgroups, meaning that students are feeling very similar outside of the race, right? So I think that is telling to us and how we need to keep working on our universal instruction, because kids are feeling similar. Does that answer your question, Director Hayes?
Director Potts.
We don't have the breakdowns, but I think it would be interesting if we could have a breakdown of what kids, the responses of kids that are engaged or involved in activities at school versus those who are not. And there's obviously no way to ascertain that in this survey, but my intuition tells me there would be a difference there.
The floor is yours.
All right, moving on to staff CFL results.
Okay, as we're moving into staff, it also is put into compartments PK through 5 staff. So this is pre-K through 5 staff are all surveyed. Now we push it strongly. We ask them to take it. It is not mandatory. So as you'll see, the number of respondents 602. Every year we hope that to be more and more as well. Student to student relationships. This is how staff deemed in the buildings they worked in or in the jobs that they held and that they witnessed student to student relationships. They thought were 89% favorable in the district. That is down 7 from the Department of Ed and down 2 from the previous year. The adult to student relationships they felt were at 81% favorable. That's our biggest opportunity from the Department of Ed, down 10 and down 3 from the previous year in Davenport. Boundaries and expectations. Again, a lot of that fairness, things in the district, things in my building are treated fairly and consistently. 77% of adults responded positively or favorable in that area. That's down 7 from the Department of Ed and down 2 from the previous year. 11% of our staff PK through 5 said that they felt physically safe at school. That's down 8 from the Department of Ed and down 2 from the previous year. Emotional safety. 2% of our staff said they felt emotionally safe at school. That is the exact same as the Department of Ed and the same as the previous year. If you're looking at it in this way, we were at 2% in spring 2021 and we stayed at 2% in spring 2022. Our result was 2%. The Department of Ed was 2%, and you can see here the distribution of all the other districts in Iowa as well. Then we go right into our 6 through 12 staff findings. There were 467 respondents that responded to the staff survey, and this is again 6 through 12. So of our 6 through 12 educators, student to student relationships, they said 47% of those staff members that took the survey felt that was a positive in our district, student to student relationships, down 1 from the Department of Ed, down 8 from the previous year. 46% of the staff that took the survey said the adult to student relationships were favorable, were healthy, or responded in a positive way. That's our greatest opportunity, 7 away from the Department of Ed and down 13 from the previous year. 35% of the staff said boundaries and expectations were favorable. That's our greatest strength. We're up 2 from the Department of Ed and down 6 from the previous year. Emotional safety, 2% said that they felt emotionally safe in their jobs. That is the exact same as the Department of Ed and down 1 from the previous year. And physical safety was at 1%. That's down 5 from the Department of Ed and down 4 from the year previous. If you look here, just kind of says the same thing, just shows you in a different way. In spring 2021, we're at 3% in emotional safety, and in spring 2022, we're at 2%. Department of Ed is also at 2%, so we have a tie in that result, and you can see the distribution here of Iowa schools. Okay, we'll take about 2 minutes just for you to look through that data and any plus deltas that you come up with.
I have a question. We have goals that we want the students to improve. Do we also have that for staff? Because I never saw a staff goal, we want to see improvement, and some of these scores are lower than I'd like to see.
Yeah. So to date, we only have the goals focusing on the student survey because those are the only ones that we are required to have take. So that's where we're focusing.
I would also say that each one of our buildings has a growing excellence plan that reviews all of this and goes to address some of that as well.
Director Hayes.
Is it possible that we could make it mandatory for all staff to take it rather than making it optional? Because the feedback is important.
Yes, we can.
Director Poston.
Well, just like the question that President Gosa asked earlier, do you have the questions as far as under emotional safety? What questions were asked?
Okay, so I'll just read briefly the PK through 5 questions. I am aware through personal observation or reports to me that students called other students' names, made fun of, or teased other students in a hurtful way. I am aware through personal observation or reports to me that students were left out of things on purpose or completely ignored by other students. I am aware through personal observation or reports to me that students were hit, kicked, pushed, or shoved by another student. I am aware through, same thing, either personal observation or reports to me. They all start that way. So the fourth one is that students told lies about other students and tried to make others dislike particular students. The fifth one, that students receive scary or hurtful messages from other students on a phone, computer, or iPad. That students make other students feel included in their group of friends. And that was the last one for PK through 5.
So you'll notice it's a lot about student to student, which I think can be confusing because you think about if a staff's taking something about emotional safety, it'd be about their emotional safety, but it's really about student to student. So those questions are very similar to what students are asked. Those are just prefaced with I told or I observed.
So the two of you as former principals, what are your thoughts on those questions and then the response that was 2%?
I would say I would see how it would be 2%. You know, there's not probably almost anywhere you are that you don't see an observation of some students teasing in some capacity. Whether you're at, I think our highest one was Bluegrass. If I'm looking at district wide, whether you're at Bluegrass or you're at Jefferson or you're at Fillmore, you're as a staff member, you've probably seen that a few times, right? And then coming all the way down to I have never received scary or hurtful messages. The sad reality is, it'd be harder to find a student who has never once they get in 3rd, 4th grade, that has never received some type of message that didn't make them feel a certain way. So I can see why it would be 2%, just because these things are apparent and more than one time the answer is a negative.
Well, that's what I was trying to get at, is that I don't know how that changes, but
Is the correct answer for that? Yes, I have seen this. Yes, a kid's told me this. Yes, the kids told me this.
The correct answer would be 0 times. So they would have seen these things 0 times.
So it would be no. Mm-hmm. I didn't hear this. No, I never knew this. That's the correct answer?
Mm-hmm. Right. So if they mark, they can choose 1 to 2 times, 3 to 5, 6 or more. So if they say that they saw that 1 to 2 times on even one question, the whole construct will be counted negative.
I would question that they were if they weren't doing their job, if they answered it in yeah.
And again, when you look at how we compare to the state or the AA, it looks like we're all in that same boat.
But that's a question that tells you nothing.
My question is, who all is involved? It gets the staff survey. What staff?
Yep. So we push it out from the district level to all staff, but when you take it as a staff member, you have to associate it to a specific school. So you have to select the school you're answering the survey for. So in some cases, if maybe you work at the operations center and you couldn't answer relative to a school, then you would not be taking it. So we push it out district-wide with that caveat, and then we encourage every principal then to push that out in their staff. And based on your feedback, we could advocate this upcoming year that they make time at a staff meeting for every staff member to do that there and hold them to do that. So that might be a recommendation to get more participation in instead of just take this survey sometime.
But is that paras and food service and custodians? I mean, everybody in the building.
Yeah, if they, again, it's optional, but if they can associate it to a building, that's what they're answering the questions on. So they would have to select Central or Harrison or Madison.
But it is pushed out to all staff.
It is, but some admittedly do not answer the survey if they don't feel they know the climate or culture of that building or don't have a deep connection to that building.
Give me 1 second. On that note, is there a way for them to notate that on the survey? Hey, I didn't do this survey because of this, so that way when you come back to us, it's all right. Well, because what we have like 3,000 employees or something like that, 2,600 employees, and if they're all sent a survey, I mean, obviously, like you wouldn't expect your operations people to answer stuff in the buildings and things like that, but if there is a way to kind of notate that, because then it
Yeah, the participation rate of our staff or family members does not count toward our performance profile. Our participation rate of our students does factor in, but I understand your point, what you're saying.
I think we could probably pose that to our building leaders. You know, what are the things you're hearing of why staff aren't taking it? That could be a way for us to get at that. But I don't think they can select a reason why they're not taking it.
Director Hayes.
Okay, just for clarification on that, if I'm the person that brings the food to a school, oh, if I bring this, if I bring the foods to the school and I have access with those students on just that short time, then I could take the survey for that.
Yeah, if they feel they have information on physical safety, emotional, adult to student relations, student to student, or boundaries and expectations, yes. They're also, anybody who takes the survey, family, staff, or students, they can skip any answers that they don't feel comfortable answering as well.
So then with the skip in that particular group, would that then be a negative?
No, it's just a wash.
Okay.
Yeah, it just doesn't count against us or for us.
Okay.
But if they skip, they have to, let's say they skip the whole survey, they still have to submit it at the end so that we get the participation rate count on the student.
Okay, thanks.
And students get time in class to take this survey, correct? Yes.
There is a breakdown in the survey when you go into Panorama to show from staff the percentage that have taken it. So for 6 through 12, for example, regular full-time teachers, that was 70%. Other professional staff, counselors, curriculum, social workers, etc., that was 9%. support staff 11%, other 6%, and then non or a confidentially protected group was 4%, meaning that there were less than 10 in that group, and they didn't have to report out what their role was. So you can see it by level that way, not by building, though.
Director Gordon, did you have any questions? Okay.
Yes, sorry about that. I switched to my phone and now I couldn't find my button. Hold on just a second because I had written something down that I wanted to ask about. Okay, I'm interested in the discrepancies between the staff and the student responses to the adult and student relationships. The students marked those significantly lower than the staff did. So I was wondering, what can we do to help, I guess, to engage our staff more with the students in a way that the students are going to feel like they're being heard and in good relationships with their staff members?
I'll just pipe in for a second. I'm not sure if this completely answers your question, but one of the things that we're actually super excited about is we're doing culturally responsive teaching practices with all of our leadership teams, and we're going to build in some trauma responsiveness there. And we're feeling that this is that work. Now it's going to be a couple years plan. It has to go slow, and we have to really embed a lot into that. But we believe that that's the work that's going to move this in the right direction. That's the work where we need to teach educators how to teach their classes where all students feel involved and all students feel valued. And there's a lot there, but we are unpacking that little bits at a time. So I would just say that's one piece of looking at this survey result data that did for us in the past, and we've kind of already started that work. That's just one piece of it, of course.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have for now.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? The floor is yours.
Okay, so after looking at staff, we'll go into our family results. This again was pushed out to all families, auto blast, or e-blast, auto dialers, all kinds of things like that. We also asked every administrator to really get it to their families and their family involvement liaison hands, do family nights around it, just get it out there as much as possible. And again, it's not mandatory, of course, but there was 529 families that did respond. Out of the 529 families that responded, these are PK through 5 families. Student-to-student relationships, 93% of families felt that the student-to-student relationships were favorable. That's down 3 from the Department of Ed and up 2 from last year. Adult-to-student relationships, 89% of our families in PK5 felt that that was favorable. That's down 5 from the Department of Ed and down 3 from the previous year. Boundaries and expectations, 79% of families felt that those were favorable in their student schools. -5 from the Department of Ed, down 4 from the previous year. Physical safety, 75% of families felt that their students were physically safe at school, down 7 from the Department of Ed, down 7 from the previous year. 26% of families felt that their students were emotionally safe at school, down 6 from the Department of Ed, and down 3 from the previous year. Now, these are the 6 through 12 family responses. There were 384 families that responded in this category. 67% of the families felt that their students were physically safe at school. That is the same as the Department of Ed and down 15 from the previous year. 52% of families felt their student-to-student relationships in the schools were favorable. That's up 1 from the Department of Ed and down 3 from the previous year for us. Boundaries and expectations, 50% of families felt that that was healthy. That's our greatest strength at 5 over the Department of Ed, down 5 from the previous year. Adult to student relationships, 47% of 6 through 12 families felt that the adult to student relationships were favorable. down 3 from the Department of Ed, down 8 from the previous year. And 30% of the families felt their students were emotionally safe. That's up 1 from the Department of Ed and down 8 from the previous year. So we'll take about 2 minutes to look at those results.
While they're reviewing those, will you read the questions that were asked in that section?
For emotional safety again, or which construct?
Just emotional safety part. Okay, as you're looking at that, I'll read you the pre-K through 5 emotional safety questions that went to families. 1, my child was called names, made fun of, or teased in a hurtful way. There were 0 times has to be the positive. Other students left my child out of things on purpose or completely ignored him or her. My child was hit, kicked, pushed, or shoved around by another student. Other students told lies and tried to make others dislike my child. My child has received a scary or hurtful message from another student on a phone, computer, or iPad. Students made my child feel included in their group of friends.
The questions on emotional safety, there are more of them for 6th through 12th grade. My child was called names, made fun of, or teased in a hurtful way. Other students left my child out on things on purpose, excluded him from groups of friends, or completely ignored him. My child was hit, kicked, pushed, shoved around, or locked indoors was added on the 6 to 11 survey. Other students told lies, spread false rumors, and tried to make others dislike my child. Other students made sexual jokes, comments, or gestures that hurt my child's feelings. My child's received threatening or hurtful messages from other students in an electronic manner, like email, phone, website, or app. There are a couple more. Something hurtful has been shared about my child on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and other students made my child feel included in their group of friends. You want to go first? Yep.
Okay, pre-K through or PK through 5, boundaries and expectations. In my child's school, there are clear rules about what students can and cannot do. Adults in my child's school have the same rules for all students. My child finds the rules at this school easy to understand. My child's school contacts me if my child did something wrong. My child's school lets me know when he or she does a good job. My child feels safe at school.
Okay, they have those questions, plus in my school, in my child's school, the principal and teachers consistently enforce the rules. If my child skipped school, the school would notify me. Students caught drinking, smoking, or using illegal drugs are not allowed to participate in an extracurricular school activity for some time period. If I got in trouble at school for breaking a rule, I would support the school's disciplinary action. My school lets me know when he or she is doing a good job.
I actually took this survey because I have 2 elementaries and 2 high schools, so it would be nice if I could merge those up, but I had to take 2 separate surveys. I'm trying to remember if I could even put that I had 2 students. I don't think I was able to. I think I just had to do it, so that probably is why the numbers look lower, because a lot of people have multiple kids in there. Director Gordon, did you have any questions?
She just said she had to jump off.
Oh.
She will be listening but cannot respond.
Oh, never mind. My wife says I got selective hearing, so.
Well, she emailed it.
Oh, okay. Anybody? You guys just dazzled us with your presentation. Greatly appreciate it. Trying to. Was there a greater participation with elementary families versus high school?
Yep. So for PK5, it was 529 respondents, and for 612 was 384. All right. So, as I mentioned earlier, we did this root cause analysis protocol with throughout our system. I'm sure you all have seen this beautiful cascade model before, and so this is where we've taken this data for them to different groups to analyze, give us feedback. As TJ mentioned, buildings are building this into their Grow and Excellence plans, and then we as a district are building it into our plan, and specifically our PBIS implementation plan. So all the time they spent in coming up with actions. If you go to the next slide, these are some of the major themes from the root cause analysis. Increased consistency of expectations and responses, specifically with our majors and minors for referrals. Having a district-wide SEBH curriculum. Prevention instruction strategies, and then community connections. So those are things that we will, again, take back to our plan, make connections, and add if we're not addressing them already in our plan. So some next steps for us that we see is emotional safety will remain our priority construct. Our leadership team meets weekly on goals in the implementation plan and aligns this work, as I mentioned. Our leadership academy focus is on creating emotional safety within our district. Our youth leadership teams last week, Lisa and Cammie met with our youth leadership team facilitators and did some learning and training with them, and they will be taking this protocol back to their building youth leadership teams to engage in the process and give feedback to our system. So that's really exciting, and we look forward to that. We are engaging in a curriculum adoption this year for SEBH with a task team. So just starting to investigate that, look at our current reality. What are we using? What do we have? What don't we have? What do we need? So engaging in that process. We will continue to work on data entry, consistency of responses, and continuum of consequences. CRVP building and district response teams will continue to support the emotional safeties within our buildings. We're going to continue relationships with school-based therapists and community partners. And we also have a therapeutic classroom task team that is getting up and running to really make sure we're expanding our continuum in regard to services we're providing to all students. And so that's what we see as our next steps. And so now, any remaining questions?
Dr. Beck suggests highlighting buildings that score really well in the future as a part of the presentation.
Great.
First of all, I want to thank this team. The cascading model is real. They do an excellent job of that. If you could have seen this at the Rogalski Center, where a lot of people, every building was working on it, you'd be very proud of the work that they're doing. There are lots of questions about the survey itself, and I want you to know that this group of people lead our district in a way of what are the things that we can control, and they run towards what we can control. And so we have a lot of the same questions that you ask, but there are still things that we glean from this survey, and we take it very seriously. So I thank you guys for coming tonight and presenting. You put a lot of effort into that, and I know that this group of people take this work very seriously. So thank you very much for coming tonight and putting the effort in that you did. It's much appreciated.
Director Poston.
Just one thing when you talk about school-based therapists and community partners. So is there a way of getting more therapists involved through our community partners. What are we doing right now, and what are some things we could do in the future?
Yes, so we have in almost every school right now either some type of mental health supports with a community partner. The majority of these are school-based therapists, and some are called BHIS, Behavior Health Intervention Services. It is a very competitive field right now. There is a big shortage of mental health providers, and many schools in our AA are also realizing the value of school-based therapists, so we are competing for people. There does tend to be a little movement, but we are always advertising and looking to add more.
Can you just list who some of the community partners would be?
Yes, Bethany, Vera French, Family Resources, and many school, Blue Tree Counseling, and many school-based therapists who have formed their own companies, their own private companies.
Thank you all for the great presentation. I do want to stress this to all the staff as well. Sometimes the survey results don't look very favorable, especially when it's a rigged survey that's not very favorable anyway. And hopefully they refine it to better help districts hone in on key areas. I'm glad that you all are working towards the things that we can control and take care of that. But the fact that one negative thing throws a whole survey out, I don't want any building to think that they're doing a bad job, because I mean, it kind of makes me feel like as a district we are, but I get it. I just want to acknowledge everyone's hard work on all of this stuff and really stepping up to the plate and going above and beyond, because if you ask our attorneys, at the end of the day, we're only supposed to educate kids, and we go so much above and beyond all of that. So thank you all very, very much for your time in this presentation, and all of the people that help out behind the scenes and all the teamwork on this. And I want every building to know we appreciate all their hard work and dedication to our kiddos in the district as well. Thank you. I tried. All right, next subject we're going to talk about is the philosophy statement discussion. I'll turn it over to Superintendent and then Director Klein Jerome.
We've asked Mike to come up and do some information gathering about our philosophy statement and find out exactly where we are. As Director Klein Jerome is a part of our policy committee, which is where this comes from, would you mind leading this discussion, Director Klein Jerome?
Mike, do you want to ask your questions and then we'll just go from there? When I read through this, I looked at the draft policy. I read this. I'm like, why are we even considering changing this? Because this seems very complete. That's my take on it. But I want you to ask your questions.
I would agree. Simply, I would agree. I think the statement, in terms of being a philosophy of the district, is quite clear. It covers the broadness of the responsibility, I believe, of the district quite well, and it articulates everything that is abbreviated in the mission and the vision quite well. This is not the same document I saw originally. I don't know what I may have been looking at. But when I looked at this and then compared it to a bit of a boilerplate product that was provided by the state, there's a word count difference of 90 words. So maybe we're a little bit verbose. But I do believe it tends to direct in a far more direct light the personality of the district and the commitment that the district has not only to the whole student, but to the staff, to the curriculum basis, to the facility structure and makeup. I think it speaks to it all quite well.
Anybody else have questions or comments about this?
Dr. Beck's comment. Agreed, might be a little too long. Consider that. Each main comment on the district philosophy is that we should not have statements like each student shall have equal access to teachers legally. We should be saying we strive to provide equal access to, or something like that. Otherwise, we would be in violation of a policy under many situations.
I would seek your advice with regard to that and council's advice on that. I'm looking at it from a sense of telling the story of the district and the vision of the district, and there may be some subtleties with regard to legality that we should be cautious of. I'm not an expert in that arena.
Anybody else got a comment, question, concern? And partly, I think, and this is our philosophy, it isn't our policy. You know, so to say each student shall have equal, that's our philosophy. That's what we believe.
Shall is more permissive than will.
Right.
You know, and it says where I see some of the shalls, shall emphasize. Okay, you shall emphasize. Here it says, where is another one? I'll find it in a minute, but shall include but not limited to. So that's very permissive, in my opinion, you know. But if we wanted to tighten that down and, you know, afraid somebody's going to yell at us because we said shall and didn't do it, people yell at us all the time anyway.
Anybody else? Director Hayes?
After I read it, I was okay with it as is. I didn't have any questions or concerns about the verbiage in there.
Director Poston, got anything? Good. I guess if you want to run it by legal to see if there's anything in here we shouldn't have.
That's what Director Beck suggests, that we just run it by Siobhan, how tight the shall and will be, and then should be able to put it out. Brenda is going to send that to Siobhan tomorrow. Dr. Beck, so I know you hear us, so we'll get our answers.
Director Potts.
What about a bulleted list? Oh, sorry, Bruce.
Sorry, Director Potts. I'm new to this game.
And this is just my thinking and for general discussion. But my feeling about education is part of its function is to pass on the common culture to the citizens so that you create in your graduates a common culture, you know, a common American culture. You know, that includes, in my opinion, that includes an understanding of the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the founding principles on which the country was created. And I don't know if that should be in here somehow or not. You know, and I'm thinking that's, you know, when people become citizens, they have to pass a test to be that they know what America is about, what the country's about, what our philosophy of government's about, the freedoms that we have, what it's about. You know, you see man on the street interviews where they ask people the simplest damn questions, and they don't know. Now, these are kids on college break. Okay, they may be stoned or drunk, but they don't know. You know, who did we fight the Revolutionary War over? They don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to rant, but I just think that's a part of the function of public education that I think needs to be referenced in our district philosophy.
I have a question in page 2 where it says the content of our curriculum shall focus on those skills, attitudes, and abilities that are vital to the successful participation of our students in their local and worldwide community. Students shall be prepared for the global society in which we live. Does that address your concern, or it's too general? And in that last paragraph, it also addresses that we will, social sciences, science, health, phys ed, technology. So in general, again, we're saying the social studies curriculum, but not, yes, but not
Just foster
specifics.
conversation. That's,
Yeah,
I don't have a wording in my head.
okay,
I left that on the counter at home.
okay. I got it written down. Anybody else?
Does this address our bulleted list comments from before, from Dr. Beck? And we had discussed maybe having a bulleted list. Does this address that?
I think it does, but it's in paragraph form. I mean, we aren't using the bullets, but okay, so we'll wait to hear what Siobhan has to say. Then do we want to bring it back to policy one more time and then bring it to the board?
Sounds like a plan.
Okay? That's a plan.
That's it? All right. Director Potts, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, meeting adjourned.